I think we all know that there are pretty severe housing needs in the city. A lot of people on the waiting list. That's a sort of self-declared measure of need. Most people paying rent they can afford or in housing that's low quality. The homelessness, it's been rising. The city's budget numbers for this year, they're planning to be able to respond to 4,600 people a night in the shelters and so on. We know that there's increasing issues of apartments in disrepair, and there's few options for a growing GTA population, so people with little money need to rent are increasingly sort of crowding into the older rental neighborhoods. So just flipping to the next slide, we can talk about a few challenges and a few opportunities. The opportunities, there's certainly some emphasis on housing, as was just mentioned in the poverty reduction strategy. Now these are mostly sort of goal statements, right? They're not dollar commitments. The mayor has put forward an open door sort of set of ideas or proposals for new affordable housing. A lot of flesh still needs to be put on those bones. We have the prospect of new federal money for affordable housing, one of the election promises of the new government federally. That will take a bit of time. It's not likely to sort of come into play in 2016. We have a new update of the provincial affordable housing strategy, which is we hear to be released this month. That may, don't expect a lot of dollars, but it may provide some additional powers or flexibility or things for the future. We have the mayor's task force on target community housing, which could lead to some improvements. Challenges, though, as was referred to a minute ago, there's a big stepping down of provincial dollars that have been coming into the social housing budget. Josie can correct me on the numbers, but it's sort of stepping in over 3 years. It's a loss of, approaching 100 million. Federal dollars are stepping out year by year for many years into the future. This year it's around 10 million loss. Target community housing has requested 14 million more or less for needs relating to the Eglinton task force, right? So opportunity, challenge. Capital costs were mentioned. Just limited resources for new affordable housing. So just some highlights on sort of what the city spends on affordable housing. You can sort of divide it into social housing on the left, hope you can see it, and the homelessness and housing stability programs on the right. So it's housing stability means things like eviction prevention and rent bank and grants to the measured tenants and so on. And so these are very cost-shared programs, right? Basically, federal provincial dollars are almost half on the social housing side and about 2/3 almost on the homeless and housing stability side. So, if the city puts in an extra dollar, it's an extra 10% from the city isn't an extra 10% on the whole budget. The social housing, in terms of what it goes to, half the city's housing money, that's the dark green down at the left, goes to Toronto community housing. Other dollars go to nonprofits and co-ops. These are the dollars that make the rents affordable, pay off the mortgages, and ensure a reasonable standard of repair in those buildings. And then on the homes and housing stability, about 3/4 of the dollars go to running shelters and the programs in the shelters, right, that help people move on and that sort of thing. And then about 48 million goes to the homeless stability programs. And so now the city does other things too. The municipal licensing and standards, right? They have inspectors. We're hoping for a bigger and better program paid for from fees that will do more adequate inspection of quality, enforcement of quality in apartments. The city planners do stuff when there's opportunities for new affordable housing and new development. Affordable Housing Office administers a few million a year on new affordable housing, and so on. So there's other stuff. These are kind of the big items. So this is, rounding it off, 670 million a year, 6% of the city's budget. But it's mostly very committed to stuff the city already does, and it's going to do the same thing this year as it did last year. To find 5 or 10 million for new stuff is a challenge. So then, the related city strategy goals, named in the poverty reduction strategy, sort of slightly abbreviated list listed here. Increase funding for social housing repairs, strengthen the enforcement of housing standards, bring forward that moving house policy framework and stronger enforcement, more housing allowances, in other words, payments of amounts typically $200-300 per month per household to help people afford their rents, more flexible rules on housing subsidy, expanded city funding and incentives for new affordable inclusionary housing development, and sustaining social housing in terms of the assets and the affordability. I'm mentioning also Housing Opportunities Toronto. It's currently being updated. I'm getting a warning. But it also states some of these related priorities. So I think then some key messages, sort of based on these sort of documents, key messages around the city budget, if people want to take those to council. The need for supportive housing, moving people out of homelessness who may have long-term issues that have made them homeless. And, half of homeless people are homeless for a short time and they move on, but half are homeless for a long time and they need other support. Maintain and increase shelter capacity, support to tenants at risk of eviction, add to the pool of rent supplements and housing allowances, new affordable housing, good repair of Toronto community housing and of other non-profit co-op housing, issues of good repair and private rental, and then support rooming houses as a necessary option, a needed option for people with low incomes, but there's got to be adequate standards. So that's a few brief comments on affordable housing as it relates to decisions the city's going to need to make on this budget.